In this lecture, we are going to talk about the Byzantine generals problem. First of all, let's consider the two generals problem. So the problem is that two generals plan to attack the enemy city, but somehow they have to reach a consensus whether to attack or not. They have to use messages because their camps are far apart. And what's more important, that these messages can be lost. So we have the first general and the second general, and the aim is to reach a consensus whether to attack or not. So a consensus when both of the generals attack or both of the generals retreat. So this is the best case scenario when both of them attacks. In this case they can win the battle, or both of them retrieve. The worst case scenario when just one of them attacks and the enemy wins. Okay, so the problem is that somehow they have to reach a consensus, and in this case, as you can see, the network itself cannot be trusted because the messages can be lost. Okay, so what to do in this case? Let's suppose the situation that the first general wants to attack. It is going to send a message to the second general that if you respond, I will attack. So the first one will attack and the second general wants to attack as well. So the second general's reply is that if you respond, I will attack as well. In this case, the first general will attack and the second general will attack if there's a response. So the first general will send a message that we will attack. But there's a problem, that this message may be lost, and if the second message is lost, there's no consensus. The general too is not going to attack because he doesn't know whether the first one will attack or not. The first one is going to attack because he thinks that the second general will attack as well, and it means that there's no consensus. By the way, there is no solution to this problem. Okay, so the conclusion is that if the network is corrupted and cannot be trusted, like in this case for example, then there's nothing we can do to reach a consensus. By the way, usually the network can be statistically Byzantine, which means that sometimes it transmits the messages and sometimes it does not. So in this case we have to send lots of messages to make sure one of them will reach the destination. So this is the two generals problem, but let's consider the Byzantine generals problem, which has something to do with blockchain consensus as well. So the assumption in this case that the network itself works perfectly, so the network transmits the messages, but the nodes can be corrupted. So the question is how to reach consensus in a distributed network when nodes can be corrupted, which means that the generals can be traitors. The traitor's aim is to make sure that there won't be any consensus, so some of the generals will attack and some of them will retreat, which means that the enemy will win. The generals and the traitors as well broadcast the messages through the network, and in this case the network works perfectly. Okay, the generals relied heavily on the majority vote, which means that every general selects an alternative which have a majority, so more than half of the votes. For example, this general is going to get a message from all the other generals. Attack, attack, retreat, attack. So these are the messages from the other generals. Because there are 3 attacks and 1 retreat, that's why the general will come to the conclusion that he has to attack. So basically this is the majority vote. Okay, so let's consider a situation with 3 generals. This general sends a message to the first one and the second one in order to attack. This general is going to transmit this message to all the other nodes in the network, so the first general will get 2 messages, attack and attack. In this case, every general will attack, so there's a consensus. But let's consider the situation when there's a traitor. This general is going to notify all the nodes in the network to attack, but because it is a traitor and the aim of the traitor is to make sure that there won't be any consensus, it is going to change the message, and instead of attack, it is going to broadcast retreat. So the first general is going to get two messages, attack and retreat, which means that he is not able to decide what to do. So there's no consensus. Okay, so as far as the Byzantine generals' problems are concerned, if more than 33% of the generals are traitors, then there is no consensus and no solution to the Byzantine generals' problem. Okay, so as far as blockchain consensus is concerned, how to make sure that all the transactions are valid and not created by hackers. And there are several approaches to handle this problem. The two most important ones are proof of work and proof of stake. Because Bitcoin uses proof of work at the moment, that's why we are going to talk about this approach in the next lecture. Thanks for watching.